Have you ever wondered if they were truly happy with the new person? Why do they still watch you, still talk about you, still need you to see them? The truth is, they never really wanted that new person. They just couldn't stay with the light you carry. The most painful part wasn't that they left, but that they made you believe you weren't enough. They smile, they flaunt, they play the role of happiness, while you stand there with a shattered heart, wondering what about you was so easy to replace. But the truth is, nothing was wrong with you. It's not that you lacked something, it's that you were too real for someone who survives on illusion. When a narcissist leaves, it isn't the end of love, it's the collapse of their ego under the weight of the truth you reflected. You were never abandoned. You were freed from the role their soul forced you to play. Because your love was never a power game, it was light. And light, to one hiding in darkness, is both what they crave and what they fear the most. So they run not because they want someone else more than you, but because they can't stand being truly seen. When you loved them with awareness, compassion, and depth, you became a mirror that revealed the part of their soul they had long buried. And instead of facing it to heal, they chose to destroy the mirror by walking away. Today, we'll talk about the real reason they left you, the emptiness that drives them to keep finding new people, and why their departure was never your loss, but the beginning of your freedom. Because once you understand this, you'll no longer see yourself as rejected. You'll realize they never left you. They ran from the light they were never brave enough to receive. If you've lived long enough in a relationship with a narcissist, you'll realize that everything about them functions like a broken clock always spinning, but never truly moving forward. Their version of love has no destination, only cycles. It begins with idealization, followed by devaluation, and ends with discard. And then, while you're still collapsing from the impact, they've already begun the same cycle with someone new, as if nothing ever happened. Outsiders might look at it and say, they probably just got bored of you. But the deeper truth is this: they didn't leave because they were bored, they left because they had to. That had to doesn't come from choice, but from a distorted survival mechanism, an internal operating system programmed to flee from anything real. When they first met you, they were like a wanderer stumbling into an oasis. They drank your love like water in the desert, praising you as a miracle, a destiny, an answer. But once you started loving them genuinely, when you stopped trying to impress and simply showed up as yourself, they began to suffocate. Because in their inner world, calm love isn't a reward, it's a warning sign. When there's no chase, no drama, their false self loses direction. The persona they built doesn't know how to exist without a crisis to control. A healthy person finds peace in stability, but a narcissist experiences peace as emptiness. They crave emotional waves, arguments, and reactions, just to feel alive. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The narcissist is the living embodiment of that truth. They cannot stay with someone genuine, because genuine love forces them to confront the darkness within the very thing they've spent a lifetime avoiding. Each time you show them unconditional love, they don't feel healed, they feel humiliated. In their mind, someone strong enough to love without conditions holds the power, and they cannot stand not being in control. So they begin to destroy what they once idealized. They pick apart your flaws, twist your words, provoke meaningless conflicts. But behind those battles lies a deeper terror, the fear that you might see their weakness, their imperfection, or worse, that you might leave first. So they must leave before you do. It's the only way to preserve the illusion that they're still in control of the story. By discarding you, they avoid the feeling of being discarded. By devaluing you, they avoid facing the truth that you once truly loved them. They want to believe they're the chooser, not the chosen. Yet hidden within that illusion of control is profound weakness. To a narcissist, love isn't a natural flow between two souls. It's a battlefield where they must always win. They crave the thrill of conquest, not for connection, but to momentarily silence their inner shame. Once you belong to them, the victory is over and the game loses its appeal. In their world, love only holds value as long as it feeds their sense of power. The moment you become independent, confident, and no longer need them, you awaken their oldest fear, the fear of abandonment. And instead of confronting that fear, they do what they always do, recreate it by hurting you first. They want you to feel the pain they can't process, not realizing they're just repeating their own childhood wounds. Most narcissists grew up in homes where love was conditional. You'll be loved if you behave. You'll be accepted if you're perfect. They learned that affection must come with control. And now, in adulthood, they replay that same script with you cast as the person who must validate their power. When they leave, they tell themselves they're starting fresh. They whisper, "This time will be different. This time I'll be loved the right way." But in truth, they're just running the same maze again, entering from a new door, yet never changing the map. The new supply isn't a savior. They're merely the next actor in an unfinished play. And the real tragedy is that the narcissist genuinely believes they're happy. At first, everything feels like rebirth. They unleash the same charm, the same sweet words, the same intense gaze identical to what they once used on you. But beneath the repetition lies something you recognize if you've been there. The absence of soul. Every smile, every "I love you" feels copied from an old script. Lifeless, hollow, rehearsed. They're not loving, they're reenacting. And in that repetition, the decline begins. Because someone who lives by image cannot replicate genuine emotion forever. They can imitate how you looked at them, how you spoke, how you cared, but they can't recreate the energy of love. That energy comes only from a soul capable of connection. They, on the other hand, are actors performing a play that has already lost its audience. The new person isn't a beginning, just a temporary canvas on which they repaint the old picture in faded colors. Look closely, and you'll see the pattern as clear as daylight. After a few weeks or months, the initial excitement fades. They start complaining about the new person, just as they once complained about you. The same lines repeat. "She's changed. He doesn't understand me. Everyone's the same." And the cycle restarts: idealization, devaluation, discard. Not because the new person is flawed, but because they can't escape themselves. Deep down, the narcissist believes each new source of supply will finally heal their emptiness. But the cruel irony is that every attempt only deepens it. They think finding someone else will hide their fear of being seen, yet forget that they carry that darkness within. You can't run from what lives inside you. You can change stages, change partners, but if the script remains the same, so will the ending. What hurts you most is their display of happiness. The photos, the hand-holding, the captions. "I've found someone special." None of it is to share joy. It's to make sure you're watching. They want to prove they've won. But only those who've truly lost need to prove anything. Real winners never need an audience. And if you look closely, you'll see in their eyes the same emptiness, the look of someone trying desperately to believe their own lie. Jung once said, "There is no awakening without a descent into darkness." But the narcissist never dares to descend. They orbit around the light, borrowing it from others and call it their own. The new supply is just another borrowed lamp they cling to so they won't have to see their own shadow. But borrowed light fades quickly, and when it does, panic returns stronger, louder, because each loss of supply takes away another piece of their illusion. And the bitter irony is this: they'll miss you not because you were special, but because you made them feel almost real. You brought them the closest they've ever been to authenticity, that rare moment when they weren't acting. But that terrified them. They can't come back. Because coming back means admitting you were right, admitting that love isn't about domination, and for an unhealed ego, that's unbearable. So they keep performing. They wear the mask of moving on, while inside, they're exhausted. Their life becomes a string of short-lived connections, each new person a dose of morphine for a dying soul. And you, the one who once believed they'd won, eventually see the truth. The loser was never you. The loser is the one who cannot be alone, who must keep performing to avoid collapsing into the emptiness they carry within. At the deepest level, their leaving says nothing about you. It says everything about them. They had to go because their fragile ego could not survive peace. To them, peace is not happiness. Peace is a terrifying void where no noise is left to hide the truth that they don't know who they are. When you stop reacting, when you love in silence, they begin to hear the echo of their own emptiness, and they panic. So they run. Run from real love, from light, from their own soul. They choose noise over stillness, illusion over reality, someone new over self-reflection. But you must understand, that is not their victory. It's an escape disguised as triumph. They leave thinking they're free, but in truth, they're only returning to the same familiar cage where everything repeats and loneliness waits patiently for them. You, on the other hand, though broken and wounded, stand on the other side of that door. And here, where pain meets awareness, you finally begin to see. You see that they didn't abandon you. They abandoned their chance to heal. They didn't choose someone better. They chose a darkness that feels safer. And once you understand this, you stop asking, why wasn't I enough? And begin to ask, why did I ever believe I had to be enough for someone who doesn't know how to love? The truth is, they didn't leave because love faded. They left because they never knew love. And you didn't lose them. You were returned to yourself, the self once forgotten in that senseless war. So don't call it abandonment. Call it the end of a cycle your soul has finally mastered. After leaving, the narcissist believes they've escaped the prison of being with you, but they fail to realize they've just lost the one thing that ever kept them balanced: honest reflection. In their inner world, peace isn't safety, it's danger. When there's no one left to argue with, control, or test, they begin to hear the noise of their own mind, and that terrifies them. They cannot sit quietly with themselves, because in silence they must face the question they've run from all their lives. Who am I when no one is watching? To them, love was never the meeting of two souls. It was a mechanism to preserve their ego. They needed you as a living mirror, reflecting back their worth, attractiveness, and importance. When you loved them, they felt real. When you went quiet, they felt like they were disappearing. So they had to create conflict, provoke reactions, cause you pain, anything to prove they still had control. Your reaction, whether tears or anger, was proof that they could still move you emotionally, and that made them feel alive. You see, they were never addicted to you as a person. They were addicted to the energy you released when they stirred your emotions. For them, love is like an adrenaline rush. The more dramatic, the more real it feels. And when you began to calm down, when you chose silence over argument, they mistook your healing for indifference. You were recovering, but in their eyes, you were betraying them. They cannot tell the difference between the stillness of maturity and the withdrawal of disinterest. When you see them flaunting a new relationship, it may sting, but what you're really seeing isn't happiness. It's fear wearing a mask. They must prove they've moved on, because if they don't, they'll have to face the truth that they lost the only person who ever made them feel remotely real. The posts, the smiles, the captions, "I've found someone special," are all makeup over the terror of being forgotten. When you are calm, they're restless. When you're silent, they're anxious. Your balance threatens them because it exposes their chaos. That's why they must break it. They'll provoke you, stage scenes, spread lies, anything to drag you back into the emotional battlefield where they know how to survive. In their world, love can never be peaceful because peace feels like death. But for you, this is where awakening begins. When you realize you don't have to react, explain, or prove anything, you step out of the loop. You see that no words can change them because what they seek isn't truth, it's attention. And the only real way to reclaim your power is to withdraw that energy. They live off the energy of others, like someone borrowing a mirror to see themselves without ever daring to look. You were that mirror, bright, honest, and full of reflection. But when they saw in it a distorted soul, they couldn't bear it. Instead of healing, they smashed the mirror. And so they left again, not because the new person was more attractive, but because the new mirror didn't show them clearly enough. Their ego hunger can never be satisfied. Every time they leave, they believe they've found freedom, but what they've really found is emotional addiction disguised as liberation. You were their strongest addiction, the addiction to truth, to unconditional love. And when you stopped supplying it, they began to withdraw, searching for a new fix, but none deep enough, real enough, or strong enough to quiet that inner void. Sooner or later, they'll realize they never left you. They only left their own chance to be truly loved. And once you've awakened, you'll feel compassion, but no longer the urge to save. Because you understand that love cannot heal someone running from their own soul. The only way they'll ever learn is when there's no one left to manipulate. And in that moment, your silence becomes the final mirror, the one they can't break, because it no longer reflects them at all. It reflects only the void. That's why peace for you is liberation, but for them it's punishment. Because peace demands presence, and they only know how to exist through chaos. And while they keep replaying the same old play with someone new, you, the one who has learned to stand in your own light, are entering the next chapter, where love is no longer a test, but the natural state of a soul that finally knows who it is. In their world, power matters more than truth. They cannot bear to be truly seen, because being seen means losing control. When you glimpse the small, lost, ashamed child within them, they feel caught like a child caught stealing candy, except their shame isn't about an act, it's about existence. They don't just fear being seen doing wrong, they fear being seen as wrong. Their false self was born from an ancient terror, the fear that if someone saw who they really were, they would never be loved. And the paradox is that when you love them genuinely, when you're not deceived by the mask, you trigger that primal fear. Deep down, they cannot believe they're worthy of love without perfection. So they destroy everything before you can prove them wrong. You can imagine them as someone clutching a cracked mirror. The tighter they hold it, the deeper the shards cut into their hands, blood dripping, yet they keep saying, "I'm fine, I'm perfect." They cannot put the mirror down, because that would mean facing themselves, and that to them is worse than death. So they throw you away the mirror that reflected them to keep believing they're still whole. Carl Jung once said, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." But a narcissist cannot do that because they survive by denying the dark. They use other people's light to illuminate themselves, yet never dare to switch on the lamp inside their own soul. And you, the one who loved them, become the only source of light in that night. Instead of being grateful, they fear you because your light doesn't just shine, it exposes. For you, love is a place where two people grow together. For them, love is a mirror. And when that mirror starts reflecting too clearly, they can't bear it. They need you to play the fan, the savior, the one responsible for their feelings. But when you draw boundaries, when you stop carrying all the blame, they experience it as betrayal. In their mind, love equals submission, and freedom equals defiance. So they shift into destruction. They will try to prove that you are the problem. You're too sensitive. You're controlling me. You've changed. Every accusation isn't a description of you, it's a shield for them. Because if they admit you truly love them, they must face a terrifying question. Then why can't I love back? It's a question they can never answer. They want you to believe the breakup is your fault, because that lets them go on living in the story of, "I'm the victim." But if you look closely, you'll see that everything they do after leaving, showing off, smearing you, performing happiness, isn't a sign of victory. It's a sign of fear. Fear that if you are truly at peace, they will vanish from this world, at least from the little world of ego they constructed. You are the last audience member of their play. When you get up and leave, the stage collapses. That's why they keep trying to pull you back, not out of love, but out of need for a witness. They need you to keep believing their illusion so the illusion can live. When you go quiet, they panic. When you cut contact, they lose their bearings. When you stop reacting, they feel like an addict cut off from a drug. That isn't missing you. It's an ego in withdrawal. And there you see their deepest tragedy. They can't live authentically, and they can't stop acting. They must play the perfect one to be loved, yet that very performance prevents them from ever feeling real love. They crave connection and destroy every connection they have. They want to be seen and fear that gaze more than anything. The more you understand this, the more you feel compassion rather than anger, not because they deserve it, but because you recognize a soul trapped behind a mask they cannot remove. And the only thing you can do for them is to stop feeding the illusion. When you cease being their mirror, they are forced to face the emptiness within. That is the first step, not to save them, but to save yourself. The narcissist collapse doesn't happen right after they leave you. It comes later, when the new supply stops working, when the people around them begin to feel drained, when every relationship they try to rebuild starts to smell like the same old counterfeit. Outwardly, they keep smiling, repeating the same lines, insisting everything's fine. Inside, they are falling. And the fall isn't physical. It's spiritual, a slide into the very void they've been running from. The price of living inauthentically is that there's nowhere to return to. You can travel far from other people, but you cannot leave yourself. The narcissist forgot this. They believe that leaving you means escaping the feeling of being exposed, only to discover that the light they fled still lives in their mind. They carry your image as an imprint, not because of love, but because you were the last person to see them without a mask, and that drives them mad. So when things fall apart, they often come back not out of remorse, but out of desperation. That is the hoovering many have experienced. They reappear with apologies, soft voices, sometimes even genuine sadness, but the motive is unchanged. They need supply, need energy, need a mirror to reflect back a flattering image. Don't let their weariness soften your boundaries. Behind those wet eyes is the terror of a disintegrating ego, not the awakening of a soul. One of the great paradoxes of the narcissist is that they don't want you happy unless that happiness includes them. When they see your peace, they feel erased from the story. Your peace becomes living proof that their power has expired. They can't stand the sight of you smiling, not out of jealousy, but because it proves they never truly controlled you. To them, your silence is a nightmare, because it means you've stopped participating in their play. And that's where the real collapse begins. With no reflector, no supply, no audience, they're forced to stare into the blank black mirror. In that darkness, they finally see what they've avoided all their lives. Meaninglessness, no laughter, no applause, no one left to blame. Only themselves and the truth that no one can love them truly while they remain false. Sometimes this collapse is invisible from the outside and happens quietly within. Insomnia, panic, suspicion, worthlessness. They try to patch it with old comforts, new people, work, money, but everything only inflames the hunger. Because what they need isn't supply, it's reconciliation with themselves, something they don't know how to do. Meanwhile, you move through healing. You realize peace isn't empty silence, but the soft sound of a soul returning home. You don't need to prove you won, because you were never in that contest. They implode in control. You revive in surrender. That gap, the gap between the one who fears losing control and the one who dares to lose in order to find themselves, is the boundary between suffering and freedom. There's a final irony here. What they call strength, power, control, image is exactly what imprisons them. And what they called weakness, kindness, compassion, forgiveness is what frees you. In the end, you learn that victory doesn't arrive when they regret or return, but when you no longer care what they do. When you stop centering them, they lose their power. And when that happens, your silence becomes the loudest voice. It needs no blame, no reaction, no proof. It is a declaration of awakening. I no longer belong to your game. And that silence, no matter how they deny it, echoes in their mind longer than anything you ever said. Because silence is the one thing they cannot manipulate and cannot convincingly imitate. In the dark, they begin to realize that people didn't leave because of betrayal, but because they were exhausted. That every villain they blamed was just another victim of a cycle they refused to break. If there is a moment when they truly brush against truth, it is not when they are loved, it is when they are left alone in quiet, when no one believes the mask anymore. As for you, the one once haunted by, why did they leave? You now see something deeper. They didn't leave you. They left their own capacity to be loved. While they keep sliding down into the shadow of ego, you step into the light of awareness where nothing needs proving or asserting, only presence. And in that presence, you not only heal, you rise, because you understand that sometimes their collapse is the confirmation of your rebirth.